Welcome back. We are here for more Q&A where I am answering your questions that you submitted a couple weeks ago on Instagram stories. I was here on Monday answering a lot of those questions too, but I had such an abundance of questions come through that I decided to break it down into different categories. So on Monday for September 1st, monthly motivation, we tackled the lifestyle questions. These were questions pertaining to routines, systems, time management, organization, and then a few random questions that came in. Even some questions regarding house cleaning. Be sure to check out that video. Of course, it will be linked in the description box below. I also will put a card up here so you can click on that and watch it after today's video. Well, we're back today to cover marriage and raising children because several questions came in regarding that topic, as it always does. Understand that in the description box, I will have all of my parenting and any videos pertaining to marriage or raising children because they will complement all of the questions I answer today. I am sure some of those videos will go more in depth in those areas, so be sure to check out that library. Stay tuned throughout the entire month of September. I will be back again with more Q&A with different topics. We have one on diet and exercise coming up and one on beauty as well. So be sure you are subscribed and also tell people about me, share this video. Let's build this community of optimizing our life so that we can be more fulfilled and satisfied. All right, well, let's dive in to the questions pertaining to marriage and raising children. I'm going to start with the marriage questions, and the very first one is, how did you meet your husband? Well, that would be a very long story, but I will share with you that we were a blind date. I will also share with you that the date did not go well. It was a complete epic fail. Let's just say when I talk about establishing healthy boundaries in all of my videos talking about how to find a high quality and high caliber man, there was a few things that he did wrong on our first date. Now, that could make you wonder how he landed me and how we ended up married with 5 children, and we've been married for 28 years. Well, there's a whole story behind that, but to keep it short, I basically stood him up 2 times because he was so persistent. I thought, if I stand you up, you're never going to have any desire to give me the time of day. But he was eager and he continued to be persistent. I stood him up again thinking there's no way. And again, he was still persistent. So I finally gave in and said, all right, I'll give you one more chance. You need to show up somehow differently. And he did, and it all worked out, but there's a lot to the story, and we'll save that for another day. Maybe a Wine Wednesday. Question number 2. When your girls were little, did you have regular date night with your husband? And I will share that this question was asked more than once. Boy, it's really hard for me to remember a lot of those details about when our children were little. I wouldn't really say that we had maybe scheduled date night. Number one, we were on a pretty tight budget because we chose for me to be a stay-at-home mom and raise the children. So we were on one income. And when you have a large family, you really have to pay attention to where you put your money. So really, my husband and I saved our date nights out for events that took place. So for example, if there was a wedding, him and I would go to the wedding, and we were lucky that the grandparents, both on my side and on my husband's side, generally would take the kids. So that would save us the money from having to get a babysitter. Although we did utilize babysitters a little bit, we avoided it as much as we could to save ourselves that money. We did have date nights out, but I wouldn't say we had a regular routine or something that is scheduled. But I strongly encourage that if it's in your budget and you can make it happen, I would go without in other areas because I do feel it's very important. And I do have a video where I talk about dating your spouse or date your mate with some excellent tips. And I definitely do encourage the routine date night, especially even when they're little, but to continue it later on in life. I'll link that video. I'll also put a card up here. Number 3 is really in the same arena. What would you do for a date night with your husband if money were tight? Well, no one says that you have to spend money to spend quality time together. You can always enlist a neighborhood teenager to maybe watch the kids for a while so that you and him can watch a movie, maybe get some pizza, some wine. You can definitely have your alone time and your quality time in the privacy of your own home. I think you just have to think outside the box. We get so plugged into the ideal, but life can be very simple, especially now as we are becoming more simple in the things that we do because of the pandemic. People aren't going out as much. So think creative. The most important thing is quality time, and quality time does not cost us a dime. How do you put the spark back into your marriage after a low spell? Date night would be number 1, making quality time for one another and also being that person that you were when he fell in love with you. A lot of times, because moms are juggling so many balls and wearing so many hats, that we forget to be silly and fun and be that person we used to be. We almost tend to take life too seriously. I know for myself, and I'm a mother of 5 and I run a business, I don't like to be with anyone who is serious all the time. I want to laugh and joke and be silly. I love sarcasm. Our whole family does. So I'm not really drawn to people who are really serious all the time. And I know that if I were always serious and it was all business when it came to raising the children and running a business in a household, that wouldn't be appealing to my husband because he wants that energy. He wants that zest. And women often get away from it. They almost act like back in my younger years, that was okay. But remember, that's the girl he fell in love with. Also, bring up some old times. Maybe there were songs that you both enjoyed listening or movies that you used to watch together and you both can lyrics different quotes in the movie. Have a little fun with things from the past because that can stir up a lot of that energy and that drive and motivation to engage back with one another in many ways, not only emotionally but physically as well. Anything specific you did between pregnancies to get your body back? Yes, take the extra weight off as soon as possible. If you want to get your body back, understand that it's not going to look the same for a while because often our muscle tone, if you had it going into pregnancy, is going to be compromised. But the sooner you can take the extra weight off and get back into a routine, the quicker you're going to get your body back. It can be done. And I say the sooner you do it, the better it's going to be. The longer you put it off, the harder it's going to be to get back into it. I know you're tired and exhausted, so don't place any pie in the sky goals on getting your body back. Start slow, but make effort. It's small things daily or every few days that add up over time. We all know that, so you have to put the work in. The other thing too is before pregnancy, it's not necessary to put on a substantial amount of weight. 20 to 30 pounds is plenty. You will have a perfectly healthy baby if you stay within 20 to 30 pounds. So I also say be very mindful. And if you didn't with, let's say, a previous pregnancy, all the more reasons to be inspired to the next time, because even with gaining 20 to 30 pounds, which is always the window I stayed in, I always had about 8 pounds to lose after those first few weeks. I had that last 8 to tackle, and I have a video talking all about this. It will be linked below. Did you have pets when your kids were younger? We did not. We never had any dogs or cats. I grew up with 2 dogs. My husband grew up with a dog, but his dog was an outside dog, so I can't really say he really grew up with a pet, because if a dog's outside all the time, it's not the same as like having that pet that you really build a relationship with. We hem and hawed all the time about getting a dog, and that would have been our preference because I do like dogs. I love Norman, my grand dog, but we hem and hawed, but we were so busy with our kids, and although it would have been nice for them, my husband and I always felt it wouldn't have been fair to the dog, because with so many children and being involved in so many things with church activities, Sunday school, sports eventually, piano lessons, all the different things. When you have 5 kids, you are constantly running the road. And yes, I was a stay-at-home mom for many years, so it probably would have worked, but it was really the fact that we always felt like we couldn't be really great dog parents because of all the going back and forth. So it worked out, and then now later on in life, we would have no desire to be tied down with a pet. No desire whatsoever. I see this often with people that are my age or my husband's age and older. I know they love their fur babies, I get that, but I also see where they're tied down. As we are phasing into the retirement years, we want to be able to go whenever we would like. We want to travel. We will eventually probably go someplace during the cold Michigan winters and then come back from spring to maybe Christmas or something like that. That's down the road. But we want freedom and flexibility, so it wouldn't be in our best interest to get a dog at this stage of life, because again, how would that be fair to the pet? So that's just our thoughts on it, and we've never looked back and regretted it. What was your go-to disciplinary action for young children, and how many warnings? Well, I can tell you that we weren't the warning type, and I am really glad that that was the case, because I believe that that's where we can get ourselves in trouble. My husband and I were always very clear, even when our children were younger. I recently shared in a video that we never tolerated whining. If they wanted something, even when they were a toddler, we would teach them to speak and say what it is they were asking or requesting. When you do that, you'll find that your kids will talk earlier, because they're not getting their way or their wishes from whining or going, which often you'll see and people give in. We just didn't do that. And as far as discipline, it always varied for each child. And I don't really recall having one concrete disciplinary action. We weren't big on timeout, but we did implement it at different situations. Often it depended on if we were at home or we were somewhere else. But I do talk more extensively about this topic in previous videos, a couple Q&A videos that will be linked below. This question came up. I also have a Q&A video that my 4th and 5th daughter, Carly and Chloe, did, and someone had asked them what the discipline in our home was, and they tackled that. So again, all I can say is I really recommend you check out the video library if you want more in-depth answers. When your girls were little, what routines and habits did you have that made a big difference? My biggest routine was getting up before the rest of the family. I can't really say my husband, because he's always worked from 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So he always got up around 4:45, 5 o'clock. So we were both early birds, but I was always up and had my time before the kids got up. Now, I haven't always worked out first thing in the morning. Many years ago when the kids were little, I actually did my workout in the evening. So when they were little, I would get up, take a shower, and get fully ready. It's hard to believe, but back then I did the whole shebang every single day. Hair, makeup, got dressed, and it's funny that now I have probably more of the time to do that, or don't have the distractions, but I don't do that. I don't do that, especially if I'm just gonna be working from home all day. But that was probably the biggest routine and habit that I think served me best. And then we ran our home on systems and routines, and I talk about that in so many videos. In fact, I talk about systems and routines in managing your time in the video that I did on Monday. So check that out. But I really believe that you have to have a concrete system and establish routines for the whole family. The kids have a bedtime, they have a lunchtime. We had a reading time every single day where I would read to the kids, and they were really good readers. And what's funny is most of my kids love reading books today. So it's really just that repetition. And it does make for your life and your children's lives and your husband's life to run much smoothly. How old were your girls when you allowed them to be alone in the house or out and about? That varied from kid to kid because they all matured at a different age. They also hung out with different kids and different families. So it was always dependent on those. If there was any concern whatsoever, we wouldn't have left the kids, or we wouldn't have let them go out and about. So it was always asking ourselves, are we comfortable? If we're comfortable, then I can't really say there was a specific age attached. It was just gauged off of how comfortable we felt about the situation. Clearly, the more children you have, generally you will have a tendency to leave them home alone at a younger age because, first of all, their fear isn't necessarily there because they had older siblings, and they've watched their older siblings, and they tend to maybe mature in that process a little bit. But when it came to going out with friends and running around and doing things and going there, generally when they were younger and even preteen age, I like to know that there was a parent involved. But again, it depended on the comfort level of their friends, their network. Once they got to teen years, again, you're kind of looking at that. There's always that question of who's going to be home, and then making that phone call to verify that parents are going to be home. And if they are home, are they monitoring? Are they paying attention to this? At what age did you allow your kids to wear makeup? That's another one where it really just depended. None of my girls were ever heavily into makeup, and they still aren't. They really still aren't. My 27-year-old is not a makeup wearer. My second daughter, Haley, who is 24, she does get into makeup, but she really only if she's going out. I mean, she likes makeup more than the first one. McKenna, my third one, likes makeup. I guess the oldest one is definitely the least into makeup, but none of them had this big desire to put on a full face of makeup when they were a teen. They just didn't. Number one, they didn't manage their time enough to get ready like that. So for school, they weren't wearing makeup. They would wear makeup maybe if they were going to a formal school dance. I was doing their makeup, so I had control over that. And then when they got older, more like when they were getting out of high school, they started to wear makeup when they would go out. But makeup was never an issue in the least bit. They weren't like me. I loved makeup from a very young age, and I'm so thankful that my mom let me tap into it when I was good and ready, because it was just more that I was creative. It wasn't about looking a certain way or not being comfortable in my skin. I loved makeup. I was a creative. So I don't know that I would put too much emphasis on age, because if you have a creative child, that's an outlet for them, and you don't want to crush that because it could hurt them in other areas. When did you allow your girls to date? So many of these are going to have the same answer. It really depended on each girl. Did they have a boyfriend? Because that's a different dating than just going out with several different people. I can also say this wasn't a really big area of concern. And I think it goes back to, am I comfortable with the situation? Am I comfortable with the arrangement? How knowledgeable and educated do I feel my child is when it comes to dating and teen sex? That's the big one, because to me, that's where I'm always going. If you're dating, I'm not thinking so much about drinking. I mean, that could be there, but I'm thinking sex. I'm thinking physical activity. So it goes back to trust your intuition and your instinct. If you're feeling uncomfortable, then you as a parent have a responsibility there. But the biggest responsibility you have is talking to your children. And that was something that I did probably more than my husband, but it would kind of make sense since we had daughters. But I was very open with my children. I wanted them to hear from me and not find out from other people. And I also wanted them to know what to look for when being pressured, maybe, or things to, just a lot of red flags. Really, it's teaching them what is a red flag. And also, again, like I talked in, was it my, yeah, I was asked in Monday's video what I would say to my 20-year-old self, or in my 20s, and one of them was in regards to sex. Well, it goes back to, don't give yourself away freely, and certainly not when you're a teen. And I talk more about that, so I know you're going to watch that video if you haven't, but again, trust your intuition. Are you comfortable or are you not? You can put an age on it, but all children are different. From what I hear, boys are different than girls. I don't know, never had a boy, but I know that I had 5 girls and they were all different. So how do you really gauge when is the appropriate time? How to monitor your child's social media and internet usage. Ask yourself if you feel concerned. Am I concerned? Is something telling me that this isn't right, or there's just too much time plugged in and kind of the distraction, and they're tuning out. So they're plugging in and tuning out over here. Well, we want to teach our children that life is balance and that doing too much of anything can be really unhealthy, and they need to learn how to establish their own boundaries. And if they can't do it, you're going to come in and establish those boundaries for them. So again, each child's going to be different. I hear with boys, they can be heavily into gaming. I wouldn't even know what that is. There's never been gaming with girls. So I think each child is going to be different. There's not a right or wrong answer. Trust your intuition and your instinct. If you feel something's not right, also very important to have their passwords. Also, periodically, just do a phone check. I just did this with Chloe just a couple days ago. I just said, bring me your phone, uncode it, because she does have it password protected. And I told her specifically what accounts to pull up for me. So I said, pull up your text messages. Just did a quick scan. Pull up your Snapchat. Just did a quick scan. Pull up, what else? I think I had her pull up Marco Polo. Do a quick scan. Also, my husband has always monitored the time that they were on their phones, because you can go into your phone bill and look at that. We use Verizon. When we had a lot of active teens in the home, he would go on and he would check how much time they were spending texting, what time of the day. Were they doing it during school? Were they doing it after hours, meaning after they were supposed to shut down? So we pulled phones. If some of the girls had to plug their phones in at night when we went to bed in our room, and that's where they stayed until morning. Then I would unplug them in the morning, walk them up to each child's room, put it on their bedside because they had their alarm set. So it was a system. We had a routine. And freedom by performance. If they want freedom, they have to perform, which means they have to abide by the rules that you have put in place. How to establish virtual learning for oldest while still managing little ones at home. This is really about creating systems and routines and boundaries. It's being very clear about what the expectations are for your oldest. I would recommend maybe creating a schedule and typing that up and presenting that to your older child so that he or she knows exactly what time everything is happening, so that there's a system, there's a routine, we follow a schedule or a program. Because mom can't be always attending to the oldest if there's young ones in the home. Mom's time is going to probably be devoted to the children that require more from her, because maybe they're not as independent. The older one should be pretty independent, but it's mom's communication and dad also in supporting her and enforcing it, so that she is not constantly being pulled away from what she needs to do with the younger children. Also creating boundaries so that the younger children know that they are not to disrupt their older siblings. So a lot of this can be done, and it can be relatively stress-free. If we want to eliminate the stress and the chaos, number one, we have to communicate. We can't expect people to know, even little ones, but it's also establishing that routine, that system, having consequences if boundaries are crossed, and take it slow. Trust the process. This is not going to be easy, because it's going to be different. Don't have these high expectations initially. Everyone just needs to work together for a common goal, and it can be done. How to encourage my child to play a sport. I'm not really sure how I feel about encouraging your child to play a sport specifically, but everyone raises their children different. In our home, we did not encourage our children to necessarily play a sport unless that is what interests them. Now, I kind of will revert back, because when the kids were little, they were in sports, and maybe we pushed that more than they did. But I feel as children get older, not all kids play sports. Ideally, they should all have some movement and exercise. But sometimes if you have a child who is not really good at any sport, it can really harm their self-esteem if they are in all of these sports and trying all these different things, and then they're never really skilled or good. So I say be careful with that. In our home, it was a requirement that you were plugged in to something extracurricular. It didn't necessarily need to be a sport, although we encourage movement and exercise and getting outside, so a sport would be nice. But if I had one that was into playing the piano and singing lessons and being in the drama club, and then she's also part of her school youth group and a youth band, and she chooses that in place of doing a sport, she's very plugged in other areas. So if playing a sport is really important for you and your spouse, I'm not going to tell you not to encourage that. But I'm going to encourage you to consider if it really needs to be a sport, or just telling your child you need to be plugged into something. It doesn't necessarily need to be a sport, but it needs to be something, because I do think it's very healthy for even adults to be plugged in to something else besides just home life and work life. We need to plug in somewhere, whether it's a church, a ladies' Bible study, a book club, whatever it is, it's healthy to plug in somewhere. I think if we encourage our children to see that that's part of a healthy balance to life, it's going to cultivate that choice later on in their life as well. How can one deal with competition between moms when it comes to raising kids? Love this question, and it can be challenging. Let me just share this. I don't have a platform for negativity. So I am out here on YouTube, Instagram stories, and if I have hate and it gets through, and I'm not taking care of that and solving the problem so that it doesn't get through in the future, then I have no one to blame but myself. I'm sharing this because I'm encouraging you moms to have a platform in your life where you look at it like, I have no platform for competitiveness. I don't in my life. And if I smell or sense a competitive person that is going to try to maybe make me feel bad or not worthy or incompetent and make them look better, I know I have no platform for it. So that person isn't going to stay in my life. Now, this can be really hard when it's in the family. So if you have a couple, a sister and a sister-in-law, and everyone is having children at the same time, and there's this element of competition, I believe it's establishing a boundary and setting up parameters with that, and maybe communicating what those are, because we all do things different. And yes, there are some things that technically would be wrong in raising children. I have a daughter who works for Child Protective Services, so even things like safe sleep, you're kind of required to follow some of these guidelines because it is for the well-being of the child. But we all discipline different. We all have different schedules for our children. Maybe dietary restrictions in our home for different things, whatever it may be. We all do things a little differently, and that's okay. It's being comfortable with who you are. If you're tripped up, ask yourself if there's an area you're not comfortable with, and then that's about you. Because when you're confident about what you're doing in raising your children, you are less inclined to even be the least bit phased when someone tries to compete with you. You take it with a grain of salt because you're confident about what you're doing. I don't recall having a lot of competition, but I think it's so much worse nowadays. There's so much shaming that goes on, mom guilt, mom shaming, which is so unacceptable. But again, if you're welcoming it and you're not tuning out the noise, then you have to say, what do I need to do with myself? Because I'm not going to blame other people for competing with me. Often people that are troubled by the competitors are just as engaged. So tell yourself, I have no platform for this. I will not welcome it in my life, and I will tune out the noise, and I will make changes where I feel they need to be made in how I raise my children so that I can be fully confident in what I'm doing, and never expect perfectionism because you can't sustain that. Do an excellent job, but don't ever expect everything to be perfect all the time. Throw it out the door. Hopefully that answered. That's a tough one. It's tough. It can be really challenging, but don't welcome it. What do you feel is the hardest part about motherhood? Well, I think it's juggling everything. For me, the hardest part is there's so many children. So even though 4 of them are adults, it's still a lot to juggle to be able to support each child and be there for each child. Both their father and our kids, although they're thriving and they're very independent, they all still need us in different ways, and it's making sure that we're showing up in their life the way that they need us to, and still navigating working. I work a lot. I work full time. I'm running a business, so it's managing everything, but I don't really see it to be that much work, and I don't feel that motherhood was really this significant challenge even when they were little, but I believe it's because I ran a well-oiled machine. So if you need to oil your machine and get it working right, that would be the best. But also expectations. I just didn't really have unrealistic expectations. I ran things well, but I understood that from day to day, you don't really know what you're going to get, and it changes all the time with a large family. I would say, based off of all the mothers, the working moms that I coach, I think the hardest part is the juggling the balls. It's the juggling the balls. And one thing you have to remember is if you had a bunch of rubber balls to juggle, but then you had one ball that was glass, and you had to juggle all of these rubber balls in that one glass ball. Okay, if the rubber balls fall in your juggling, what are they going to do? A rubber ball that falls is just going to bounce back up, right? But what happens when you're juggling those balls if the glass ball falls to the ground? It's not going to bounce back up. It's going to shatter. So it's really important as a mother and as a wife to really look at what is the most important thing. Because the most important thing is to make the most important thing the most important thing. Because that most important thing, that glass ball, could shatter. So we already know you have a lot of balls in the air, but just pay attention to how much energy you're putting into the rubber balls, when really it may just be that glass ball. That's where the energy needs to go. Okay? Let that be your little advice for the day. Well, there you have it, answering your questions regarding marriage and raising children. Don't forget to check out the entire video library in the drop-down box below this video. Also, I will have information on upcoming courses that are being offered by the coaches of Hensel Coaching and Consulting, so be sure to check that out. Outfit and details are always linked. If something's not available, I will put that in there, but I will also put the store where I purchased it at, because I know you appreciate it. We will be back later this month with more Q&A. Again, diet and exercise, always a hot topic. Coming up very soon, we will also be tackling beauty. Bear in mind, you need to follow me on Instagram stories. I saved a handful of questions and answered them earlier this week on Instagram stories. I don't get on as consistent as I used to, but my Instagram stories are content. So if you want more life skills or hearing me answer people's questions, check out Instagram stories. I'm always talking about topics that are in my video: time management, organization, systems, routines. And again, you always know coaching one-on-one is where you're going to move the needle, drive the bus, raise the bar the most in your life. If you want to make radical and significant changes in your life, work with me one-on-one, and we will help get you from where you are today in whatever area it is and where you would like to go tomorrow. So thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and I will be here next week. We are celebrating, speaking of pets, McKenna and Bobby have a cat, Bo, and we are celebrating Bo's 3rd birthday this weekend. So our family will find anything to get together and eat and be merry and celebrate. So anyway, all right, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week with some more Q&A. Take care.